Okay guys, welcome to part 2 of our hard surface modeling for production for FX PhD. Hopefully you guys will have gone away, made some of your own kit bash, alternatively possibly just familiarized yourself with this kit. At this point, this has all been made and UV'd. One of the things I didn't mention at the end of the last section was the importance of UVing this before you start, because we are going to throw this all over our model. And it's not the core of how to model, but you want this UV to save yourself time later when you're going to be duplicating it around. So we'll have a quick look. I'm just going to bring in the UV editor. So for example, kit 1, which is this piece here. Now in some of these I've laid them out as whole kits, some of these they're individual parts. So in this case, each of these pieces are already UV'd, and the reason for that is that I might well go and put them into other combinations of kit bash. But generally speaking, like this one, everything is laid out. That's probably the better way to go, if I'm honest. So I might redo this one. That one's pretty simple. This one again, I believe the pieces, yeah, they're all done. I've got a few cases where I haven't completely finished it. This looks like, again, a couple of pieces that have been combined. That's not completely finished yet. And again, this one here, this looks like, again, I've combined a couple of other sections and I've not UV'd it. So that's going to, in fact, this looks like a duplicate. So that might just be a transfer from one to another. So I've got to come in and do some cleanup before I provide this for you guys. But you can see I've done a basic naming convention. What I would want to do when I finish is just make sure everything's UV'd. If I was being really super neat, I would also check the scale. So with our UV toolkit, what I could do, let's take a couple of pieces that are a little more complete. So I could take this piece, for example, and we're going to go to toolkit, hit get. So that's a scale of 307 pixel density. Let's select all the pieces. Let's just hit set. Yeah, that was roughly correct already. I've got this overlapping piece, so that needs to be laid out. What I could do if I was being super neat is I could make everything the same scale. Now, like I could take this piece and go, right, what scale are you? So if I pick this one and I check the scale of one piece, get 464. So there is an argument to say I'll make it all the same density. The issue is if I do that, it's not going to take into account the fact that on our final model, I'm probably going to duplicate these pieces and I'm going to have some of them that are twice as big. I'm going to have some where I squash them. So it's not really going to matter. I mean, ultimately, we're still going to have to scale it and lay it out later on. So I'm not too fussed about the scale of the UVs, but yeah, you should probably lay them out per group. The other thing we want to look at is just making sure if I select a group that everything is centered and frozen, which, for example, in this case, it's not. You can see here it's got -2. So just make sure you freeze everything and make sure that the pivots are on the center. And again, I would suggest you name your pieces. So look in here, for example, I've got a cube. So I'm going to want to give this a naming convention. I've got a loose convention I'm using here, which is the name of the piece. So this is kit 4 bracket 1. So that'd be again kit 4. Get rid of the 1 at the end. This is going to be, so if I wanted to name this, you can use the inbuilt Maya renamer. So I could just write in here kit 4 underscore brackets. Bracket 03. It's not the bracket, but we could do that. And I could do that for, say, different pieces. Right, it's going to name them all. It's not the neatest. Like you can see here, it's done 2 bracket 04s and then underscore 123. It's not ideal. The one I do like to use if I open up the script editor is download Comet Rename. So I've already downloaded this plugin. Just going to run that, and we've got Comet Rename here. So in this case, it would be more likely that it would be a full rename. So I'm going to say kit 4 underscore, and you could be as simple as calling it piece, and then I'll have padding. We're going to start at, let's start at 3, and we're going to have padding of 2, digits, and then I'm going to have a suffix of _geo. So let's do rename a number. So kit4 underscore piece 030405. Actually, we could have started that at 1. So 1, 2, 3, and then add the prefix. Oh, sorry, add the suffix. There we go. So comment rename, a lot easier. You could also combine your pieces into smaller pieces. The reason I haven't here, and this is I think quite important, is that I often keep them separate if they're different materials. So I don't, at this point in time, I might want to make this a sort of more of a rubber and that a metal and this a different color metal. But if it's several of the same kind, so for example, in this case, it would make sense to merge these two to one piece. So just have a think about that when you're setting up your groups. So rename UV everything before you move on with your kit bash. All right, let's have a quick look now at blocking out our mech based on our concept. Okay, so this is where we want to end up at the end of this lesson. We want to have everything blocked in. I'm just going to hide the kit bash 1 sec. We're going to have everything blocked in. We've got our concept lined up, and we've got a rough idea of the scale. And you can just see I've got a scale figure in here. So at this point, once you've blocked all this in, we're ready to go. So let's start with a fresh scene. We won't need the kit bash for this first stage. So the first thing I'm going to do is import some reference. Okay, so I have a figure that I use for a lot of my work that I call the standard male. So let's bring him in. Okay, so here he is, he's off center. I think, let me just bring him back to the center. Okay, so here we have our guy. So now we want to do is create, we're going to want a second camera. So I'm going to say, let's go create cameras, camera. Okay, panels. Let's do, tell you what, let's change our layout because I want to keep the 3/4. I want to keep the outliner, but I also want my other view here. So I'm going to say layout. Let's do 3 panels split left. Yeah. Okay. So I've got my 3/4 here. This one we're going to say look through selected. So this is now the concept cam. So let's call it that concept cam. Okay. And in this one, let's make sure that's selected. Yes, it is. We're going to go to our settings. We're going to scroll down to environment, hit create. It's created an image plane. And now we're going to load in our concept. So I'm just going to bring that up and concepts. Here we go, tank concept 1. We want the closer one. Perfect. All right. So we've got that in there. Now what we want to do now is sort of line this up roughly so that we've got the man is about matching roughly this guy. And we're going to start plotting it. We'll change this camera as we go. So a couple of things we're going to change first off. You can see as I push him away, he starts clipping. Let's just make this a bit bigger. So that's our depth. So let's change our depth from 100 to say 500. Let's put in a ground plane. Let's say about that big. Okay. And what I might also do is take our chap here and I'm just going to push him out a little bit. So he's roughly where the other guy is. Now, for all we know, that's good, but we're going to have to see as we go. So let's see how we do when we start blocking stuff in. So we'll start by, I'm going to start really simply. This is all going to be very low res geometry. So we'll start with a cube here. I mean, we can also make duplicates of this guy. So I might put one back at the origin as well, just to give me a rough reference. We didn't put any exact measurements here, and that's fine. It doesn't necessarily need exact measurements at this stage. So I know for a fact that this is, I'm going to want to have 3 legs on each side. I do keep calling it a spider mech because that's generally the term. I mean, technically speaking, it's kind of a beetle mech because a spider mech would have 8 legs. This does not. So let's just, so I'm just trying to put something roughly in line with where roughly in line with where this is. Let me just, I've redone my cameras. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to continually move this as I try to line this up properly. So it looks to me like this extrudes a little bit. So what I'm actually going to do, and we may not, or we also may not stick to this later. We may change this depending on like creatively, like what we want to do. All right, so I've got that. I'm probably going to do a duplicate of this. So this is going to make the upper portion, and this one might be a little bit wider. It looks, I'm going to guess something. Oh, I'm trying to get the edges of this to line up here, so I get the same sort of profile that I've got on the design. Now I can tell you that we're doing this from scratch, so this is going to differ slightly from the one that I showed at the top of the lesson, but you know, it's never going to be 100%. We're kind of just eyeballing it, and that's fine. Okay, and I'm also going to put in some sort of cylinder just to represent, well, firstly the center of the model, but also roughly where I see, you know, this turret section pivoting from. So again, we're going to keep this, you know, how we've talked about 8 and 16. So let's cut this down to 16. It's unlikely we'll be using it, but you know, I'm going to just do it anyway. And then before we start on the legs, because the legs is going to be the most complex part, I'm also going to very quickly just try to, and I really anticipate this changing, but I'm just going to try to very quickly outline something to do with this turret. Now already I can see the angles are different, so already I can see myself changing, you know. Now this could also be the lens, so you might think, I think it's set to 35 on average. So let's go and insert some edge loops, and let's bring our tool settings in for that. And again, I think this is where we want that exact 50%. So we'll put a loop in there using multiple edge loops. We can shut that down now. I mean, sometimes it's quite good just to do that anyway, just so you have them. And you can always adjust. Like here, I'm going to bring this forward, and then this one I want, because it sort of comes in there. So I 100% envision all of this changing. And I also, we also might just try things like extruding. I reckon this is going to get sort of worse before it gets better. Let's do a loop through the middle. Okay. And I kind of want this bit to be flatter. But yeah, that's beginning to sort of come together. What we can also do, and this is going to make things a bit easier, is we can go display polygons, and we can turn on backface culling, and that way this becomes much easier, because suddenly you're only viewing the polygons that are directly, you know, facing the camera. So that's super useful, particularly in this viewport. And now I can see, right, it's less convoluted, so I can start to work out, okay, maybe this is too far forward, yeah. And if I move it over a little, that's looking a bit better. And it looks like I have maybe made it either too wide or too long, or maybe a combination of both. That looks like that's a little more accurate. And then I think this is also going to, oh no, it looks like both of those from this viewport. Just make sure, yeah, look, I've accidentally selected one too many. That's the trouble with backface culling being on. So let's select this. We can always clean up, as long as one side is neat, you can always clean that up later. And this doesn't, this geometry in particular actually doesn't have to be neat, because this really is just so we have something as a placement. So you can start. Now you'll notice I'm working in this view, but I'm looking in this view. So that's the other thing, is that I'm often moving. It's very easy to forget. If I start moving this, I'm not actually touching the other side as well. So that can be a little bit messy. In fact, I think have I messed that up? Yeah, a little bit. So what I'm going to do here, just to clean that up, is I'm quickly going to flip that. So let's say duplicate special. Oh. In X, bump. There we go. Mesh, combine. And then what I will do going forward is, let's merge those, is I'm going to turn on symmetry in world X. Yeah, and that way if I make any slight tweaks, it'll just mirror it. Okay, so I'm going to add some edges here because it looks to me like this whole section on the side should be reduced there. Look, that's really beginning to come together now. Now it might be that we use this. It also might be that we don't. So just try not to get too precious. I can tell you already that compared to the first time, this is actually a better match because I didn't quite get this side bit the first time I did this. So in order for me, just to avoid like nudging my camera, I'm actually going to select that camera, select it in the outliner, and I'm just going to hit S. And that way, I've just keyed it. It just means that if I move it, and I could totally mess up, I can just snap back to frame 1 and it'll just snap back in place. If I do end up like finding a better match, then I can just hit S again and key it, but equally all I have to do is snap back and I've got it. Okay, so look, we've already got a nice block of the top and we've got something in for the body. Might change it, might add more, we don't know. It looks sort of roughly, I think, about right. Let's start on the legs now. Okay, let's start on that leg. I'm going to move this guy out the way because he's going to be a little distracting. Let's push him off to one side. So obviously this concept is firstly not accurate in a 3D space. It really is very rough. This leg on the left is probably the clearest we have. But I reckon I will build one to the side here and then we'll instance it afterwards and make some adjustments accordingly. So, or we might do it as we go, we'll see. All right, so first things first is I know just from my own experience that I want the main joint to be a ball joint. So we're going to start with something like that. So I'm going to turn snap to pivot on, I'm going to turn wireframe on shaded on, and this way that the leg that's connected can move any which way it wants. So we're going to start with a ball joint, and as I say, we might adjust things as we go. So looking at this, I would say the ball joint is roughly behind this structure here, and then we're going to go to some sort of cylinder. So let's bring that up to the middle. We're going to make a cylinder. I'm going to rotate exactly 90. It's important to be accurate with this stuff. Okay. And we'll bring that out. And we're going to pop that in roughly somewhere. I'm going to guess here. Might end up being smaller. And I'm really just going to use a combination of cubes and all kinds of basic structures to get my first pass in. So it's going to be quite basic, but that's fine. That is literally by design. I just want it to sort of work on a crude level. So I'm now going to look to this. So next to that sphere, we are going to do this is going to be a simple one. Now, this to me looks like this has a second structure inside it. So how I'm going to interpret that is, firstly, I want this to be a little bit, just want one of them. There we go. This to be a little bit wider. And then this structure I'm going to say is shorter at the top. And then it's going to have another one inside. So this would be telescopic in my mind. And let's bring that up. And I mean, if we wanted to be really like trying to match it, we could do some extra stuff as well. Oh, I'm not sure we need to actually. Let's turn our symmetry off. That's causing weird things to happen. So, you know, I could try and match. I'm just eyeballing this to one side, and as I say, we'll adjust afterwards. So we could bevel. I mean, look, that's roughly what we're getting there. And then I'm going to want another structure here. So now we're looking at this one. It might be that your reference is a little easier to line up to than mine, but in this case, this is what I'm doing. So that's going to be my next pivot point, and then looks like I've got another, so that's going to duplicate, bump about there. This is this one, and let's also get this armor plating. I actually quite find this process in a way quite liberating, because it's really very, very simple, very fluid, and it's in a way it's a little hard to do it wrong. There are things I advise, like I'm doing this all on, you know, one straight line here, which means it's going to be super easy to group and reuse this. But generally speaking, yeah, I think it's a little hard to get this wrong. I mean, even some of this detail, even now, is more than it needs. Okay, let's push that, and I might bend this a little. Don't even know if that's needed, truth be told. Okay. All right, and then the next piece. So this is a very chunky piece. We'll make it roughly the same. And I might even add in this curved section. Again, does not need to be accurate. Let's do this though. Let's make this a little easier on ourselves. This will give me a point to snap to. So I can snap to there. And it looks like that is, I'm going to give me one more edge in there. Actually, I didn't even need to do that. But yeah, okay, so we've got that. That is also, let's just push this back a bit, and let's just combine those two. Mesh, combine, modify center. So we'll just do that, a little bit of a bend in that. Yep, okay. And then we're going to have another pivot. So I'm just reusing these cylinders. This one, I think it's this one, because this green one here looks like plating. So I'm going to say it's the one at the back. Okay. Just Made another cube. So super simple structure. And okay, this one is going to be, I think, relatively straight. Donk. Might even also bring it in a little, so it's tapered. And then this looks like it's going to have, oh. Now, where is that rotating from? Let's just check. Oh, it is on object. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, bum, bum, bum. No, we're getting a little messy, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're just doing this section a little bit longer. Okay, and there's a second one of those as well. So we'll duplicate that down. Something like that. That's probably going to be a bit too wide. And that one's tapered too much, so we'll take that out. Okay, that looks about right there. There's one extra piece which I'm going to use this cylinder for, which is something there, which actually means this could be a bit lower. So the other thing I might start doing as well, just for my own sake of working this out, and it's really important we do this first, and the reason is it's going to give us sections to work on one at a time, you know, according to where their pivots are, but it's also going to help us work on scale, and it's going to help us like divide it up, and it means that but when we model it, we'll model it functionally. We'll model it so that it can fold and bend and move. Let's just very quickly add some shaders on this. So we'll quickly throw in a couple of blends, right? And I'm going to make one a green, and I'm going to make one a darker metal, and so I'm going to make sure all our pivots are the darker, and all our bodywork is the green. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got that, and so we're almost there, and now we're just going to make sure we have our wheel, and then one more, duplicate. Okay, let's pause there, and then now we're going to flip it around and try to realign to the concept. Okay, so I've gone ahead and grouped that leg, and now what we're going to do is basically set up the hierarchy and then instance it and adjust stuff so that hopefully it can we can match it, line it up to this a little bit better. There's no way it's going to line up perfectly because this is very much a concept. It's already, you know, a lot of these pieces have been duplicated photo bash. It's not going to be accurate. It just isn't. But we want the rough sense of how these joints are going to work. So in my outliner here, I've got my pieces. Let's just reduce this window a little. Come on, there we go. So I'm going to do a little trick here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the sections controlled by locators effectively. So I'm going to start by, on each of the bits that are the joints, so it's going to be the ball joints, and then these sections here, bum bum. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that's about right. And I'm going to go display and then transform display, and it should be the local, I'll do that again. It should be local rotation axis. And what we'll get then, if I hit 4 to view it in wireframe, you'll get the local rotation axis, but you can snap to this. So I'm now going to go create locator, And what I can do is I can take that locator and I can snap it, turn on snap to point, bump, I can snap it to point. So though I'm going to group each of my sections under those locators. And that means I can alter the geo, but I'm only ever rotating the locators. So let's go create a bunch more. There we go, there's a bunch, there should be 7. All right, so we're going to do the second one there, the third one there, the fourth one there, the fifth one there. Number 6 is the furthest forward, and then number 7 is that one, and they should all be lining up nice and neat. Yes, brilliant. Okay, and now what we can do is we're going to put 2 under 1, and we're going to put 3 under there, and we're going to put 4 under 3, and so on. And that is going to be our hierarchy. So now we want to put our pieces under, let's just make sure I've got that right, yeah, 7 under 6. Okay, so now we're going to put our suitable pieces underneath each section. So that is the section that goes under 7. And under 6, we're going to want this one. What that means is that when I then go to 6 and move it, it'll move 7 as well. So then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all going to go under locator 5. And then that works. And then that is going to go under 4. And that as well. So let's just check that works. Yes, it does. And then that will go under 3, losing track, as well as this one, I guess. 3, and then bomb is going to go under 2. Ooh. And then lastly, I think they're going to go under 1. So let's just give that a quick test. So this would move that way. Yep, 2 is going to do the big arm. 3 is going to do the elbow joint, effectively. 4 is an additional joint. Now, we might change these to ball joints and different types of joints later. That is correct, although it looks a bit weird. 6 is the lower wheel, and 7 is the additional wheel, which actually doesn't have anything on it, but we've put a joint there anyway. Okay, great. We've done that, and that is going to sit back inside group 1. All right, let's instant this. So we'll say duplicate special, and we'll just reset, make sure it's set to instance, no transforms on the scale, duplicate special, and then let's move this around. And we're just going to try and position this so we'll get it roughly in line with this leg. Now, the other thing I'm noticing is I think the perspective is off a little bit because we're getting a lot of distortion with this leg. It seems like way too big. So let's have a quick look at the camera here before we do too much, because I'm realizing even if I moved this leg in a lot, that's going in too far. That's going to be way too difficult. Well, maybe not. Let's just do a quick test. Okay, so if we say select camera, and we'll have a quick look at the settings here. It is set to focal length 35. Ooh. I did wonder if it would be better at 25. That's moving it more distortion, isn't it? Do we want to go the other way? Do we want to go 50? So look, 50 would be flatter. Oh, yeah, we want to go 50, yeah, for sure. It might ruin some of our turret section. Oh, that's not too bad. Okay, I'm more happy with that. It's not going so far off the plate. So I'm definitely, it's still pretty well lined up. So let's select camera and just key it again. Okay, so that's better. All right, let's have a look at adjusting this now. So we've got, now hopefully as we move this, you'll see both legs moves perfect. All right, so we are going to change things up a little bit. So I think that's going to be lower. You can already see this trying to line this up just a little better. There we go, we'll push that back. can adjust individual pieces as well. And then let's have a look. So this is too tall right now, it's just coming off. So I think what we're going to do is correct this a little bit, back to like there. This looks a little too long as well. So now again, we're in the 3D view, but we're looking at the 2D view, and we're specifically looking to line up to this leg now, just to get things a little more accurate to the concept. All right, so let's go locator 3. We're going to push this back and down a little bit, roughly there. So I think this angle might be wrong. We're going to tilt that up a bit more, perfect. And then go back to 3. Okay, that's good. That's actually surprisingly close, which I am both surprised and pleased by. So that's good. And then let's look at 4. That's not too bad. Okay, so except that we need to rotate it down a bit. So we're just trying to get our proportions like correct here. Again, it's not going to be perfect. It's definitely not going to be perfect. But if we can get it a little more accurate to the concept, it's just going to help us like later on. Okay, let's, and again, this is also helping us work out, you know, from a rigging perspective, like it's just super helpful having everything like blocked in like this. Okay, so we're getting, that's going to be roughly that shape. So we've also altered the shape of our proxy mesh. Okay, so this is the shin. That's actually not too bad, but we'll rotate it a bit more forward, a little further down. And it's technically too long because it's going through the floor now. So let's take these sections, and actually I'll tell you what, let's take number 6. I want that wheel has to sit on the floor. So that's actually pretty good. Might even be a bit further forward. Yeah, it's probably more like that. So around about there, which I believe means this is, that's too big. So well, yeah, that looks better. And then this one also is going to come up a little. Brilliant. Okay, that I'm much happier with that. Let's rotate that wheel. Yeah, so look, let's just select, let's turn off the transform displays. Oh, I think we're going to have to select them, because now that we've got our locators in, we don't need them. There we go, turn that off. Oh, looks like there's one, where's that one? There's 1 or 2 left, but never mind. So look, how's that looking? Okay, good. It's a little more compact, but I think that's about right. Let's have a quick look. So group 2, the whole thing was 125.8. Let's say minus 125. And then we'll get our leg and we'll do another instance. So duplicate special. So this is going to be something like 55, I guess, minus 55. Yep. Which, so now we're really beginning to plug, and it actually is fitting the proportions quite well. So I'm quite pleased by that. Duplicate special again. And you can convert these instances after the fact. So that's going to be 55. So we've got, it's basically 55 minus 55. That's even. Now you'll notice when we were pushing stuff around, it looks like we've made one end of this like longer than the other. Oh, just fractionally though, so it's not too bad. But just keep that in mind. If we're going to flip the front to back on this, this is going to be deleted effectively. Right, group 1 again. This one's going to be complete 180. Okay, and so the last one will be, I'm guessing, 125. Yep. Okay, so this is great. We've now got to a point where we've blocked in the robot, and actually this is sitting nicely within our concept work. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to save the scene, and then just before the next session, what we're going to, in fact, we'll do it quickly now, but we're just going to roughly put the cannons in as well. Yeah, let's get the cannons in there. So let's just do a file, save scene as. So I'm going to make a folder for this. We'll call it geom, and I'm going to call this blocking. I normally name based on the stage I'm at. So this would be blocking 1. You know, if we were to do this slower, we could have blocking 2, 3, 4. Next one will be leg 01, and so on. So we'll just save that, and then let's very quickly. So this is going to be the simplest part of any of them. So we're just going to get a cylinder. Now I'm thinking it's convenient with how we've modeled this, so we can just snap to these points here, and already that's actually like almost bang on. So we'll go edit and duplicate, and we'll make the sort of mount section, and then we'll make the actual cannon section as well. So this one is going to be a little more, there we go. It's not actually sitting in the middle in the concept, it sits sort of at the upper end. Now, this looks like a little, like it's potentially mine's pointing in the wrong direction. I mean, it might be that we group this, center it, and then angle it up to match the concept. That might look a little weird. Let's do it for now. And it might be that we just model it clean, straight. It doesn't, because the concept could be like even now, look, I've copied it over and it doesn't quite line up. And that's because the concept, as I say earlier, was photo bashed, and it's not exactly correct. So the last one will be the one on the top. So I mean, this is going to sit in the middle, so it's a little easier to do. And that's roughly correct. And let's get a cube in there, scale it down. Okay, and we'll also extrude it. Boom, that looks roughly right. Again, just eyeballing it, one of the concepts. You can work in 100% in the concept view if it's easier. This one is tricky because this looks like it would match better. Let me turn symmetry on. This would look like it would match better if I tilted down, but that's going to look ugly. So I'm going to veer off the concept a little bit here and sort of do what I think looks best. Okay. Okay, so we're a little above what the concept is, but that's fine. It's roughly speaking, we've now blocked it in. Okay, so the last thing we do before we finish up with this is we're going to group sections. So, bump. You can potentially convert your instances to groups. So that's going to be bump, bump, bump. That's going to be the top gun. This section is going to be the turret. This is going to be the body. And then we've already got all our groups here for the legs. So I'm just going to group those together and say legs. And then I'm going to take those 4 groups, group it together, and we're going to call that the block. All right. That is the end of the first part. We've blocked it in. We've got our scale correct. We've got a rough line up to camera. And we've got a ground plane. We're set to go. So now the next lesson, we're going to start basically building one of these legs, and then we'll duplicate it around, and it's going to start coming to life. All right, see you in lesson 3.